Right, well, good day and welcome to another Crypto Monday Zoom on the 19th of August. It's all about global thought leadership, featured guests by the community, for the community. It's all about personal journeys, passions, insights, trends. Uh, it's to stimulate thought and conversation between the community and these thought leaders that are so kind to give us their time. And the whole mission is educational. Our mission is to learn, to earn, and connect, to teach our community or to help them with that. So, is there anybody in the room who would like to make an announcement? Something that they've just launched in their company, a new job, a big deal, raise some capital, put up your hand or just open your mic and tell us something new that's happened in your life. Anybody there? No? Going once?
Well,
Right.
I guess I'll
Great. Here we
I'll
go.
do my presentation. I just mentioned to give a little background. I'm developing Minutes Crypto. It's a crypto accounting calculator, and we have basically connected to all the major chat platforms. So now you can go into chat platform and you can download transactions, you can classify transactions, get reports, basically talk to your crypto transactions through your chat and figure out what's going on. Like if you have 10,000, 20,000 transactions, I think it's pretty valuable. So it's available now. You can try it.
Right.
It's a free software. You can
And it's free, eh?
try it. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So
Dimitri,
far.
well done and thank you. That's great.
Awesome.
Anybody else got an announcement to make? Anything new that's happened in their lives? Right, let's move on. So just about joining Crypto Mondays, there's a link which Lilia put in the chat very kindly for us. Start a Crypto Mondays chapter wherever you are. It's free. We support you to get it going. Join our Agent Monday. We've been building Agent Monday for the last year. Alan Domain, who's on this call, has been, with his army of AI agents, has been building our community agent, which is now operational. Lou might mention a couple of things on it just now when he does an introduction to the talk today. And then the Decentralized AI Agent Alliance, we formed as a sister organization um, to what's the thing, Lou? I don't think I can do it, but it's for decent people who are involved in building decentralized AI agents or in that field. So it's particularly decentralized ones. Got 240 or 250 members now, and that's going on. Agentic things are a lot more sexy than blockchain these days. So it's been growing like crazy,
You did a
and a
good
lot of
job there. Thanks.
thank you. A lot of thought leadership going on there. Just come off the agentic commerce call, which was quite fascinating. Eric Forst is right on top of his game from that perspective. And then, yeah, join our Crypto Monday Zoom. Lilia will very kindly put the link in the chat so that you can be notified of the upcoming talks. And then forthcoming attractions, we don't have somebody for next week. It got postponed to a little later. But the following week, we have a pretty interesting Tony Greenberg, who has, just have a little look at the topics there. Psychedelics accountability, so extractive capitalism and energy abundance. So that should be quite a fascinating one. I'm actually quite interested myself to find out what it's all about. Decentralized philanthropy. So that's in 2 weeks' time. Next week, you get the week off. And then our guest today is Jason Melo. A little bit about Jason. Let me just move this out the way here. So twice unicorn founder, successfully built 2 unicorns, co-founded Paxos, the AI-driven tax platform Exactera, $1 billion valuation, pretty impressive. And the first ever regulated crypto exchange on Wall Street, he helped launch. And he's an AI privacy, I think you say in America, innovator. So CEO of PrivacyPal. And so we'll hear a lot more about that just now. And a community builder, he's offered to found Crypto Mondays Palm Beach. So we look forward to the next installment there. And a college dropout turned founder. So over to you. Actually, no, before we do that, Lou sometimes likes to say a couple of words, Lou, and then over to you, Jason.
No, I just real quick, became reacquainted with Jason on a recent trip to Miami and learned about the company and was super excited to have him come. He's had a great journey to share, and what he's doing now is interesting. So looking forward to hearing your talk, Jason.
Thanks so much, Lou. Over to you, Jason. Thanks so much for making the time for us.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Lou, and thanks to everyone for joining here. So, yeah, really excited to get in front of this group and start to get involved. I had an opportunity to join a Crypto Mondays session in Miami, and there's a few other people in my network too that have been talking about Crypto Mondays and the just really what the mission is about it and kind of what the format is, and it's something that really resonated with me. So I'm excited to just, give you guys a little bit of a peek into my journey, kind of through, the companies that I've founded and my perspective on, how I look at technology and how I build, and a little bit around what we're doing with PrivacyPal today and how that intersects, but not only intersects is really dependent on the blockchain and crypto, both crypto in terms of on-chain and cryptography in general. So yeah, really hoping that everyone gets some value out of this talk today. So let me go ahead and share. I assume Rob and I have sharing rights.
Yep.
So I'll throw up a deck here just so we have a good backdrop of things, and I will try to make this work. I'll do my whole desktop that way too. When we can go into the product a little bit, we can take a look there. So hopefully you guys see the presentation and that you now see it full screen.
That's
Yep.
it. Looking good.
Perfect. All right. Fantastic. So yeah, I mean the theme here is really me talking a little bit about how I was able to build two unicorns, and now on to what I know will be my third unicorn company, especially if I look at, I'm a big statistics and kind of numbers person, and so the data is kind of mathing out in that way, but we'll see. But it's really about the mission. It's never about going into it trying to start a unicorn or have a certain valuation or any of that. I think that's all a great bit of, call it, fuel in a lot of different ways that really helps us, be successful at our mission, right? And the mission really always is, how can we come into, an industry and understand what is really the innovation that's necessary in order to create that opportunity for change, right? And it's always where we see change. It's always where I see that change is necessary, is needed in terms of actually, coming into fruition and being something that we can then build not only an organization and a community around, but also a company that's able to sustain, the careers of many and actually have an impact on the market. So that's usually always the compass that I set out to in terms of what we do. So just a little bit on my background. So I created my first company, as Robin mentioned there, in my dorm room at Northeastern University when I was a student there. That business really started to take off and took up so much of my time, where I looked at in the mirror and said, well, look, I came to college to have this opportunity to have a career like this and create this type of profession for myself. It's already here. So kind of college didn't really kind of fit into the equation anymore. So probably about, I don't know, 1 or 2 years before Zuckerberg did it, I did it first and dropped out, but it's now, I guess, become the fashionable thing to do. But it's, really the story there is about that my business needed me, and that's where it took me in my life, and I'm really fortunate for doing it that way. That company that actually ended up being my first exit was not a unicorn, but it was a great exit. But what's most important is that got me out to Silicon Valley, where I started, creating my next company and really getting involved in the community in the Valley and upping my whole kind of just awareness around what it means to build an organization, not just the technology. After some time in California, I had kind of, New York was calling and the whole financial services space and how that was spinning up. And I came to New York to actually work at a firm that's where Lou and I first had our first overlap. So we were both at a company called LiquidNet. LiquidNet focused on dark pool technology, basically where the big whales in the traditional Wall Street systems, how they're able to move and make trades and do all those things. Lou and I were on the capital markets side, trying to build essentially private placements, right? How investors can invest in private companies. Think Forge before that was launched. But that's where I ended up meeting the folks that we created Paxos, that I created Paxos with. So Paxos, we first started as a company called ItBit. ItBit then became or was subsumed by Paxos and the brand there. But our first mission was to bring Bitcoin. At the time, it was just Bitcoin and Litecoin trading to Wall Street. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on what we did there. But that ended up being the first ever regulated crypto exchange on Wall Street. We were the first to bring market makers into crypto. We sourced people who were making markets in traditional markets. We gave them a ton of Bitcoin and said, hey, here's how you do it. Here's how you integrate with our exchange and how you actually make markets in the crypto space. So we had to not only integrate the players, we had to educate them on even how to do it. And that's definitely been a theme kind of throughout all of the companies. As you're a first mover into a space and really trying to change the model, you have to bring a lot of awareness, a lot of education, while at the same time bringing in the people that can actually be that tip of the spear with policy change and other kinds of things that you need way beyond technology to even create your right to exist and your right to succeed. After Paxos, I ended up spending a lot of time in big enterprise. So it was my first time stepping out of startup land. I was the chief architect and co-founder of ADP's Next Generation Group, and did that for a while. But that's where then an old co-founder of mine came and tapped me on the shoulder and says, I have this crazy idea to bring to basically disrupt the enterprise tax space. And I said, well, what is that? I had no idea about tax, or besides just filing my own tax returns with my accountant. But it seems to be that there is a big opportunity for this thing called transfer pricing and provision, which is really only something that multinational corporations, public companies need to deal with. But we ended up scaling that. We raised well over $100 million through like Insight Partners and some others. And I was the founding CTO of that company. And we ended up getting into the market with clients like 3M, Adobe, GE, and Intuit. So I like to call it Intuit because the guys that do everyone else's taxes, they did their taxes with us. And we were the first to bring machine learning, AI, but really it was machine learning into a space. And we were able to disrupt all of the big business that the big four accounting firms were really eating up and charging millions of dollars for these companies to do. We took a process that went from weeks down to minutes through AI and automation and really data at scale. And after Exactera and after leaving Exactera, that's when I started working on kind of the initial idea around the tokenization of data for in the interest of preserving privacy and creating essentially enterprise data exchanges that were able to be fully trusted while fully functional. And that has what is now evolved into what we're doing at PrivacyPal and taking that to the AI space. So we'll go through that a little bit more. And also a managing partner or a partner in a venture capital firm called 496. So if anyone's ever interested in that and in what I do on the kind of the capital allocation side, as well as with PrivacyPal, would love to connect with any of you. So really, as I was kind of intimating towards when talking about what we did at Paxos and kind of bringing that forward, running towards the regulator. I think a lot of people, especially in crypto, we may not embrace regulation and we may not embrace that opportunity to actually be not only in the conversation, but helping the regulators really understand what is in front of them and how to actually think about it and think about the benefit for their worlds, for their constituency. And then at the same time, you bring those regulators and kind of the credibility of that space back into your company. So at Paxos, we brought them onto the board. We had former SEC chairs. We had folks who were involved in kind of FINRA and banking and FDIC. That's how we were able to be the first ever FDIC crypto money exchanger and financial services company, right? First ever secure that level of government insurance and government backing for crypto and digital assets. So then bringing those incumbents in, right? You look at a space and we say, okay, who are the incumbents? Well, they're market makers and they're NASDAQ. And they're the folks that basically Wall Street is already plug and play with. Bringing those incumbents in, that's how we did it. Same thing when at Exactera, we brought the incumbents in, we brought Thomson Reuters in, we brought PwC in, we brought the people who were in that space, but more importantly, we brought the IRS in directly and some of the other tax jurisdictions globally. And yes, it's great from an education perspective to really understand what's happening in the market. Getting them vested in our company in kind of a myriad of different ways, wherever kind of we're able to, both legally and ethically. But also more so is that once those incumbents have adopted your technology or adopted your way, it then becomes essentially the other side of the coin where, okay, now the regulators are stating that, well, the way that Paxos is doing it, the way that Exactera is doing it, the way that now PrivacyPal is doing it, that becomes not only the way that the market starts to move and the expectations that get established, but that sends signals back to the potential customers that says, okay, well, they're the ones that are in with the incumbents. They're the ones that we know that it works with the system that we have to play on. It becomes essentially not a question at that point. And that's what really opened up the market opportunities and the growth that we experienced through all of that. Picking problems that the giants avoid, I think that's really evident, especially in what we're doing with PrivacyPal. Everyone's running so fast on AI, but no one's really stopping and understanding the true privacy issue and data privacy issue that we have on our hands, and also the need for sovereignty of our own data, regardless of the automation or the conveniences that we get out of those systems, right? We can't just kind of throw everything out the door because we want to run fast on these new technologies. What happens to our intellectual property? What happens to our personal information? And there's a way to solve it without the traditional kind of cybersecurity approach of blocking or redacting everything that we're doing. So that's been key. And then really the fourth piece that really comes in that supports all of that is that community that you can create. We're pushing more and more to create that and help foster the community, whether it's on the developer side with what we're doing, but really just getting the word out there and having those conversations, hosting events, being involved in events like Crypto Mondays, and just getting the word out there in this forum for the community. So, products, as it says there, right? Products always get copied, but ecosystems don't. I touched on regulatory juice, right? Everyone hid from the regulators. We invited them in. And that's what established us and allowed us to be the first ever regulated crypto exchange on Wall Street. We started with one market maker. We had multiple market makers come to the table. So we were not only the first ever to be regulated, we were also the most liquid for quite some time before like the Coinbases and Krakens kind of caught up to what we were doing. Kraken actually started at the same time that we started ItBit, but we leapfrogged them significantly in the start. But they've caught up since then. I think they've done a phenomenal job with that. So, the unsexy problems. There's always going to be money to be made and markets to be made in those unsexy problems, because all of those global logos, all the big guys are dealing with these unsexy problems every day. I think we see a lot of it in, whether it's in social or other kinds of, just information that's going around today about how to be the best founder, how to actually find those opportunities. And depending on the influencer that you follow in the market, I think a lot of them are starting to touch on this unsexy problem space and how successful and lucrative it can be if you're actually able to understand the problem, communicate the pain of the problem, live in the problem, right? The solution's important, but you have to live in that problem and talk about the problem and live in the problem space constantly. That's where you find all of the other, your potential customers in that market, they start to really align with you. They feel that gravity pull in because you're talking their pain. You're talking, the things that are front of mind to them, when they wake up in the morning and the challenges that they have. They don't have the luxury and kind of the mental space to imagine the solutions and imagine what's possible. They're just like, damn, I need to deal with this today. And this is a real big problem. And my CISO is coming down on me, or the board is, pushing this way, or even just my customers are worried about this, whatever kind of level or size company you're dealing with. It's always about falling in love with the problem. And that allows for gravity and kind of orbital gravity around what you're doing to really get creative. So a little bit to kind of, pivot into why, we're working with AI and, my career, I've done a lot in obviously crypto and in other spaces, especially around data and everything. But this is really the first time that we have a technology that is driving all of us forward, and whether it's on a personal or a professional basis, where, it's in the name, right? A large language model or small language models. There's a problem with language, right? And there's a problem with sharing our information with something that is dealing with language. And we then are, everyone's walking around with a hammer, the cybersecurity hammer, right? The traditional kind of ways that we've all looked at, protecting traditional computing systems. And everyone in the cybersecurity space is carrying that hammer, so everything looks like a nail, and they're just trying to nail the problem over and over again with their hammer. But where I stepped back and looked at this, and I said, kind of, in a couple of different ways, but especially from a language perspective, I said, this is only going to be solved with language, right? It's not going to be solved with blocking or redaction or any of that. So how do we actually have the ability to have the data, right, never leave your device, but still allow that language model to return and deliver 100% accurate results as if the data went there, right? And that's where kind of the epiphany around what we call our privacy twins came about. And privacy twins are essentially statistically identical synthetic representations of your information. And there's a lot more complexity kind of rolled into that, but basically, how do we pass the context that the models thrive on, and then have the ability to encode and decode that information on the fly while adding such a small amount of added latency to the process, right? So we're on average around 100 to 200 milliseconds of added latency, which, to a human is fairly imperceptible, but still be able to do that entire round trip fully on device through encoding and decoding of that information. That's the basic premise of how this works, and how we've solved the ability to maintain full privacy in any kind of context of using AI, right? So we cover, I can't think of any major AI platform that we don't cover. So whether you're doing something in a chat, in your web browser, or in, say, like Claude Desktop or ChatGPT, using Grokbot, Hermes agents, Gemini, Copilot, all the different kinds of applications, whether those are on desktop, web, and then now we're about to release mobile. That's really how we can really address the problem, because AI is not only completely ubiquitous, it's such a shifting landscape. So we felt that, okay, if we look at just one slice of the problem, all we're doing is helping promote this whole kind of notion of shadow AI, right? Shadow AI is something where, okay, a company blesses one way to use AI. Well, AI is something that's not only personal, it's kind of cultural at this point. Hey, I use Gemini for this, I love Claude for this. People want to bring that preference with them into what they're doing. And it's a real problem in the industry. We deal with, and we're fortunate to have customers who are some of in the top 10 of global banks worldwide, as well as, legal firms, accounting practices, a 5-person accounting practice, all the way up to massive banks. And, over 68% of those employees, they paste sensitive data into public chatbots, never mind like the chats that are maybe the enterprise tier that the company is using. And we've seen over and over again that it's not even about them sharing your training data. AI has, the companies like OpenAI and Claude will give you a ZDR promise, right? Zero data retention in terms of training their models. That's a minute slice of the overall kind of data exposure risk when it comes to AI and really any kind of third-party usage of your data and your information. And where we've also taken it to as well is going well beyond just normal PII, personally indicative information, or GDPR, HIPAA, and all that, which is crucial to protect. But also, how do we actually understand what a company's intellectual property is, and where does that information live? It lives in Slack, it lives in Salesforce, it lives in Workday, it lives in their deal platform, whatever they use to manage their customers, their teams, and the communication channels between those teams. So we've also, through a lot of the blockchain, aspects that we leverage, which I'll go into in a little bit, we've found a way to, essentially create zero knowledge, where we don't retain that information, but we're able to understand when that information is going out the door or potentially trying to go out the door, either through prompts or the files that are shared with prompts, and how to protect that information, but still take nothing away from the workflow and the results that their teams are having as they're going through these different processes. So, in kind of another way, the mechanism, we detect on device across 47 different data types, as well as intellectual property. We swap in those privacy twins that keeps that statistical bandwidth and then revert real values into the answers. It's a patented technology now, because, redaction blinds the model and twins keep it smart while the secrets never leave. That's the high level of PrivacyPal. I can go into a demo in a little bit, but I wanted to dive into more of the blockchain aspects of things and what we're doing. We work with a lot of businesses today. We have over 120 businesses on the platform. Some blockchain companies like Peak, who we also use on the back end, other blockchain companies that I can't name here, large banks, telecommunication companies like Vodafone and Fastweb, and we've now protected well over 10 million sensitive elements from our customer base. So we're really proud of that. For example, in the crypto space, right? An address plus a prompt, right? It's a docs, and a wallet address is public, but the linkage is not. And the address plus the client context and a prompt, it binds identity to holdings in a vendor's logs. And we essentially throw away all of the notions of, both public but privacy on chain, and where that's really important, whether it's, authorities coming and knocking, competitors, or, hackers. And so the twins on the address, they keep that substitution consistent, so the flow of funds, the paths, and the clusters hold while those identities never leave. So blockchain got unsexy, but AI needs it anyway, right? So I love that now AI is the thing that has actually created such a need for blockchain on kind of every different facet, right? And so we've got kind of four main ways in which we leverage the blockchain and where it's crucial for us, right? And AI just became the best customer this technology ever had, right? And it's not for tokens, for trust, four places where blockchain is in our products. One, authentication that you can't fake. So every PrivacyPal machine carries its own on-chain wallet, a machine identity. Devices talk to the platform. The wallet signs, the transaction verifies on-chain, and it essentially becomes a multi-factor authentication for accessing any of the sensitive data that's on that device. We hold a vault and what we also call a synthetic graph on device, and that's fully protected through a multi-layer pass access, one of the key layers being on-chain transaction verification from that machine. So that has never been and is not compromised. Like obviously there's quantum concerns around that, but we're staying abreast of that and ahead of that in the industry to make sure that maintains pace. Second, the audit trails that you verify instead of trust, right? So on chain today and in production, we identify through peak PIDs, and those artifacts are there's a hash that is on IPFS. We have all the machines talking to each other through Streamer and the Streamer platform on chain. That way that we can identify essentially data signals, and while still preserving the privacy of all of that, it makes the network stronger, makes the security more emboldened, but also too, we have immutable audit trails of everything that we're doing. And so when a regulator asks, who touched your AI, you don't say, trust us, you can actually point at the receipts. Third is zero knowledge by design. We're a privacy company that cannot read your data. So it's never unencrypted. Any failures are closed access, and there's no central pile of plain text and nothing to breach. We also have a lot of our customers that run what we call PrivacyPal Cloud that allows them to run fully within their own network, their own data center. We're working with some on-chain providers as well to have that be a compute runtime that can run on-chain. But in those cases, they're fully sovereign within their own network without having any compute or data, no matter how encrypted on our systems. And the fourth way, and it's this kind of an upcoming way, is that we're shifting from a, not entirely for everybody, but, kind of a traditional credit card type of a payment process and leveraging X402 payments so that these agents can actually pay each other for data protection and data privacy, and doing that all on chain and facilitated automatically. So we really feel that this whole utility, and this has been my mission in blockchain ever since leaving Paxos, was that, what are the non-financial use cases for blockchain, and how do we actually make that a reality and show the world what's possible with it? And I think this utility layer is really that act two for blockchain that we're really excited about, and what decentralized backends can really be for. So I want to dive into just showing you guys, if I have some time, just a little bit of a show and tell on PrivacyPal itself, and just kind of how simple it is and how it can be. Won't go into too much detail here, a really kind of simple example, but I've got Claude desktop running here. And within Claude, I can just put in a basic prompt, hi, my name's Stephen Jones. It knows who I am, I'm logged in, but regardless, my date of birth is such, and in the associated data set, who's closest in age to me, right? So I'll add a file onto here. I want to look at this. Let's do a list. Let's find file. I should have had this prepped a little bit more. All right, one second. Go by name. Where's my random data? Hold on a second. All right. Why does this not feel like it's formatted by or sorted by name? Random seems to find everything. Well, at any rate, let's
What it's called, the demo gods. Yeah?
That's right. All right, we've got our file. So immediately, if you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, just a little toast notification comes up that's processing that file. That file is now ready to go, and I can submit my prompt. Now, I know that the answer to this is someone named Jessica Thompson, but the AI never gets Jessica Thompson into its model. But yet I get back the exact correct answer. None of my information went out, and my experience stays pristine in terms of the results that I expect. I can dive into what we call our protection panel here and essentially see, okay, what just happened here? It found all this information in the file. There was addresses, names, phone numbers, other location information, and all of the kind of twinning and synthetics that it went through to create that, and the file that it encoded. So immediately within that exchange, all of that information was protected and was made private in terms of what I'm doing. I'm a huge user of AI across the board, as I'm sure many of you are, and I have PrivacyPal running at all times, and it just really just tucks up here in my task tray. I don't have to interact with it. I can just go around and use the different applications that I use kind of day in and day out and have that full privacy protection without any latency. We have kind of the different systems that we can protect. You can manage that. We're the first to ever have private memory. So that private memory is something that, if you're on our pro tier, follows you around individually to any of the AI that you're using. So your context follows you and you're able to manage and maintain that context. But also then too, in our Max product, that's where we get into multiplayer AI. And so that context is able to really benefit an entire team, and you can create a contextual ontology, essentially in a memory layer for your entire team to really benefit from. And then we give a way for folks to manage that memory in a really direct way. I just refreshed my memory recently, so there's things around. There's not too much here that I see, but I can see how many memories I have, the entities that are linked to that one memory, whether I want the memory to come and enrich back into prompts. So we're really building an AI operating system, a governance and an enablement layer. Yeah, privacy is how we start with that, and that's our core foundation. But it's really about how organizations can look at AI usage in their company. They can see what different people are doing on which platforms, what are they sharing with those. Here's the prompt that I just put in just now. In terms of and it understands, okay, that's high risk because there's a lot of PII in it. And it follows all of my AI usage across all the different platforms that I'm using. All of this is integrated in with different, security management systems and auditing platforms for an organization. In terms of connections, here's where I can onboard things like my Slack or my Salesforce, so I can just easily connect those systems so that data stays protected as well while I'm using AI. So thanks everyone for letting me, take you through a little bit of PrivacyPal and what it is. Happy to take any questions, or would love to connect with anyone more directly in terms of a more in-depth demonstration of that. And as Robin was mentioning before, we're getting involved in helping get the first Gold Coast Palm Beach Crypto Mondays launched. And so really looking forward to that. We're starting to partner with companies like Palantir and ServiceNow that are in that space. And we really feel that the builders are next, and we're trying to attract those builders to the area. And we're really excited to do that with the Crypto Mondays community. So thank you, everyone.
That's absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much, Jason. That was a fantastic overview. Pretty incredible track record. So open to the floor. Put up your hand if you want to ask a question. Between Lou, Alan, and I, we have some questions to ask Jason. But jump in ahead of us if you feel like you have something you'd like answered. Can I just kick off with Lou before we go to Dimitri?
Okay, so thanks, Jason. It's a lot of info there. Very impressive. Where are you finding product market fit? What type of customers? You mentioned it sounded pretty broad, but any particular types of companies, geographies, level of sophistication?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's been actually kind of remarkable. I thought that it would only be the much more sophisticated, like larger enterprises that saw, kind of that had awareness of the issue. But it's really wherever, companies that are dealing with client information, right? Their customers' data, and understanding kind of the responsibility around that. So there's been a lot of fit in the banking space, both small and large banks. Legal firms. We actually have a number of clients that they're using platforms like Harvey and Agora and all the others, but they also have PrivacyPal there as well. And accounting practices. We had a really great influx of customers, especially during tax season, for a lot of the accounting practices that are working. But We even have, an oil company that works with us. So there's broad applicability because AI is coming into every business everywhere. But it's definitely those regulated industries that have a little bit more of a mandate for how they deal with information. And then especially on the legal side, where you're essentially breaching, client attorney privilege by sharing information with language models.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And then on the flip side, what's the biggest roadblock to faster growth?
Awareness of the problem, just really kind of people that don't actually appreciate what's happening with their data. Both on on the kind of hosted frontier model side, there's a lot of kind of more obvious issues there. But even we see companies that are running private LLMs within their organization, there's a lot of kind of cross authorization issues where data that's going into models is getting bled out to the rest of the organization in ways that their security team doesn't think is possible, but it's absolutely happening, and we're showing that.
Yeah, shocking. Well, I think that the world is at least moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Jason.
Thank you. You're muted, Robin, I think. Trying to talk.
Yeah, Dimitri, I think you're up
Over
next.
to you, Dimitri.
Okay, I'm next.
No,
Okay.
you caught me off.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I think I'm not muted. Thank you so much, Jason. Amazing presentation. It's very relevant, and Lou's question was amazing because because it's exactly our industry. So I'm in accounting and legal accounting, legal tax rules. Or you want to use powerful engines, but you're restricted because you have to strip the data. It's very complicated. So, but my fundamental question to you would be, how do I know that what you're saying is correct? How do I know that it's what your system does? It does me data somewhere. How do I get this clear confidence? Let's say if I recommend your product to my colleagues and I say, hey, this thing will encrypt it and here's how it works. I mean, why would I trust it?
Thank you, Dimitri.
Yeah, it's a great question. Through our product, you have full control over seeing what data has been processed. You have full logs around that. You have, also immutable logs around which data went out to the language model or out through the API or a private MCP layer, whatever it is, through agents or chat. And so you really get to see what is actually being shared, what's coming back from the models, and which data did not leave your devices. So you have a full audit trail, a testable audit trail to all of that occurring. And then with some customers as well, we tell them, look, just toggle PrivacyPal on and off, put in the same prompt as a test, see what the answers are that you get back, and if they are essentially identical, right? No language model is deterministic, so you never get the exact same answer back every single time. But essentially those answers are the same, whether or not we're on or off. So whether it's the testing to what data is actually being shared and being transferred, as well as the accuracy of the language models with our product or without it.
Thanks so much,
Right.
Jason. Thank you, Dimitri.
Hey, Jason, you can stop sharing your screen.
Oh, sure.
And next, Nico, welcome, dude.
Wow. Guys, thank you. Jason, that was awesome. I really
Thank you.
appreciated that. The thing I love most about your presentation is you're very modest. Like there was some deep insight in there. And of course, Lou, Robin, thank you guys, man. I get a lot out of these. Jason, I'm a community guy, so I'm reading this from the framework of protocols, users, almost customer service, really customer education. The point that really resonated with me was how you talked about awareness as a language and not a gating tool. Like so many
Right.
people are just like, hey, let's put this genie back in the bottle. Um, so really love that framework, more of looking at, the language behind it and not just gating everything at every turn. Um, I'm so curious about where you would find the biggest breakdown. So for me, when I talk about AI models, I'm like, it's kind of like running out of gas. You're driving down the road, you got two people, you got one person who's like watching the tank, and they're like, okay, I need to get gas. I got to pull over here pretty soon. And then you've got other people that are just like, oh, don't worry about it. We're never going to run out of gas. We're fine. We're having a good time. So I'm just curious where you would describe in the protocol model, would it be gaps in executives, in their mindset, or the gaps with the builders? My role is a little bit more of the builder framework. Um, and I'm just so curious your thoughts on that. Or of course, the end users themselves, like who would you say is the biggest gap that you find?
Thank you, Nico.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I don't know if someone can give me a hand. I'm trying to get rid of the share, but it's just not, there's like nothing on Zoom that's allowing me to stop the share.
The
I'm
ghost
not
of
doing it.
Zoom, man.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing that says like stop sharing unless I'm completely missing it. So sorry about that.
It's cool.
Anyway, so I don't know, Robin, if you have kind of an admin
Let's try
override
and
on
kick
that or
you off.
something. So yeah,
Um,
Nico, it's where we see the biggest gaps are it's it's kind of across it's across a few different aspects of the business, right? I think definitely, executives are when you're not on the security side, so more CEO, COO type of roles, right? They just, in their mind, they're like, look, we need to have a mandate for AI. We need to token max. We need to just push, push, push on AI, kind of all over the place and push for that. That's where I see the biggest gap in terms of them having a realization of what that actually means for their organization and what they're actually in bringing in and is forcing that share of sensitive and intellectual property that's going out the door. Right. I think that's the biggest area because they're so, whether it's board pressure or other things like that, they're just like, we got to get AI in place. I've got to show numbers on the productivity, on the efficiency, on all of that. We've got to go, go, go. And then you have like more on like the CISOs, right? The information security or the security officers. They're saying, whoa, 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 stop, time out. We've got to block, we've got to restrict this. And there's no other way to do that but blocking. And what they're not realizing, I think the biggest gap I see with them is that they're creating a massive shadow AI problem. And that's one of the biggest things that we address because, like I said, like, AI, it's like we wear it on our sleeves almost like, oh, I love this, I love that, I love Claude, I love Gem. This is what I use and how I do my thing and how I'm able to be who I am as a professional these days. I'm going to keep doing that. So I'm going to find a way around. And so there's very little awareness of how big of a problem that is and what that's causing. Um, Developers, they've always throughout time, right? There's been this need to like shift privacy left, right? Shift security left has always been kind of the talk in that whole software development lifecycle. And so we're going to be doing some upcoming hackathons and some other things in the developer community because we have an SDK, we have an API and an SDK that you can build applications on top of our platform, on top of our technology. And a developer can just do that, directly in their code, directly in their Claude code, and build those applications. We have one of our banks are building one of their retail banking mobile apps right now using our SDK. So you've got kind of different gaps, but gaps across the entire spectrum because it's new. It's immature technology. It's new, and people aren't really aware of what actually is going on. If we thought social media was bad and what we shared with them, that's a fraction of what the issue is potentially with AI and what we're sharing there.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. You really nailed it too. God, Claude is like my four-wheel drive, and GPT is like a two-wheel roadster. And
Yeah,
I love them for that reason. I don't want to take a four-wheel drive on a 6-hour road trip.
exactly.
So you really nailed that. Thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome.
Thank you, Nico.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Aaron,
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
perfect.
Hey Jason, nice to meet you, man. Incredible presentation. Yeah, there's obviously, privacy resonates with me pretty deeply. I'm one of the co-founders and builders of Houdini Swap, where we've kind of, we've been around 4 years and we've basically become kind of the crypto market leader in private transactions. A lot of the stuff that you shared around data protection services, we're we're just eerily focused on, financial data protection services. So kind of adjacent industries, but kind of speaking to the same tune. Or yeah, man, I guess my question is just like, we've kind of had like our 0 to 1 moment. Like we're a small startup out of Toronto. We just got acquired by a NASDAQ listed company, and we're kind of just like, in that 1 to 10 phase. And just like wanted to hear from your experience, like where, like where that, where that can come from. I think for us, like, the challenges around privacy and crypto have always really just, we've been wrongly misinterpreted, wrongly labeled, as like money launderers or, terrorist financiers, or, like a site for illicit or criminal activity. And then any legal compliance or, proper team that takes the time to do their diligence on us, they often find, that we are just a privacy tool that's, helping, Aaron pay Jason without doxing his entire financial net worth to him. Right. And that's a good problem that everybody wants to solve, whether, you're left, right, or up, down, it doesn't matter. So yeah, man, I think like, I guess 2-part question is like, like for us, like, where do you think maybe that 1 to 10, scale and, widespread adoption can come from? And I guess number 2 is like, any tips on like reverse engineering this kind of negative narrative around privacy? I think we're like just super bullish on these things, because if you look at any, disruptive company throughout history, they're always kind of on the corner of nascent industry plus, pushing the agenda. Like you look at Uber getting into a stranger's vehicle 10 years ago, must have seemed pretty taboo. Strangers home, now Airbnb. Betting plus crypto, is now Polymarket and partnering with CNN. So it's kind of like, we feel like we're that, but is it just wait and see? But I'd love to get your thoughts. We obviously aren't former Paxos guys or Wall Street, where we're younger founders in our mid-20s, so we don't have that cloud or motion. So
There's a question, Aaron.
No, that's a great question. Yeah, no, great questions in there. And Aaron, congratulations on the acquisition as well.
Yeah,
so
thank you. Yeah.
So yeah, I think you kind of actually touched on it there in terms of that, like the 1 to 10 piece. And it's something that I spoke a little bit about, and it's really getting kind of like living in the problem space, right? If you live in the problem and the problem that you're solving, and that's the conversation that you're having, it kind of almost doesn't matter like how you solve it or what you're doing, right? Like the people who are feeling that pain, they will come through to that because you're talking their language, you're talking about the problem. You gave a great example in terms of Uber there, right? And like the Uber thing, it wasn't about, oh, getting into a stranger's car. It's also about, well, yeah, you're getting into a stranger's car with an app that's tracked, with knowing your location and your destination, with being able to share all of that, with having that convenience. Like we're solving the problem of trying to hail a taxi, or being in a neighborhood that's maybe a little bit lower privileged and there's no taxis that will come and pick me up here. And like they lived in that problem, as opposed to, hey, some stranger is going to like, attack you because you got into their car. Right. So I think if you live in your problem space, that's the way, that's kind of the way through for that growth. And then your second question, which was around the second one was how to
just reverse engineer the narrative around privacy, as like something to hide criminal activity, cash.
Yeah, so there, right? And we're kind of starting to do a better job of this now, but I think that comes from like credibility, right? And so like if the market is seeing that, like, oh my God, like, hey, these guys are out there talking about PrivacyPal and what they're doing. They're a customer of theirs. They're trusting them. They're doing it. And they're seeing real people doing that, brands that they recognize. So it's a challenge to get there. But once you get there, that kind of market credibility and those signals are what helps you transcend, hey, this is a scam, this is such and such. It's like, well, if they trust them and I trust those guys, I should trust them.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that, man. Awesome presentation.
Thank
Brilliant.
you.
Thank you so much. Louis, you like to have your last question. I can't remember what it is now, but I think it's a year from now. Are you there? I think I think I can remember it. So Lou always asks the last question. He says, "Okay, if we're meeting a year from now, what will the conversation be about? And where will this be, and what will the challenges and the opportunities be? What will the narrative be in a year's time?"
Yeah, I think in a year's time, I think the narrative, at least like in the space, but especially for us, is around, you know, if I look out at like my roadmap, right? Like we're actually just launched it on the website today. We're rolling out what we call PrivacyPal family, right? We want to be able to solve the problem, and I think we've been able to solve the problem of a child and a family's relationship with AI, and how to actually, you know, have a safe space to use AI and not have to worry about the AI telling, your kids something like about harming themselves or whatever it is, right? There's no reason why that can't also be accomplished with this technology. And that's what we're launching today. So I'm hoping that we have, our goal is to have 1 million families, having safe usage of AI in a year's time. That's probably one of the biggest ones for us. And then just more ubiquity around what we're doing, more touch points across mobile and the enterprise. And just the fact that AI is able to have its actual, like, is able to realize its full potential, and we as a society can then trust AI, right? The trust needs to be sovereign. It's not about trusting these other companies. And so if we bring trust, if we make trust sovereign to us, to our companies, our own, then that's what allows AI to actually be successful, and us not to fear, the Terminator future, but the actual abundant future of what it can be.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's a fantastic way to end off. Jason, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your time, and your journey with us. It's been absolutely fantastic. I have a ton of questions, but time is up. Thank you.
Thanks,
Reach out
Jason.
Good
anytime.
luck with your new chapter.
That was
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody,
everyone.
for coming along. Thank you, Lilia, and thank you, Alan, for supporting us with
Thank
the
you, everyone.
engineering elements.
Thanks,
Cheers,
everyone.
everyone. Have a great day.
So, cheers.